Good. I think we might as well start off. What I'd like to do is welcome everyone on behalf of SSGN, the Spirituality and Sustainability Global Network. And this is our monthly conversations program, which is being recorded and which will also be uh, posted on YouTube for our YouTube channel, so people can tune into it later. And we're so pleased to have tonight Emmanuel Roux. He is the founder and executive director of the Urban Food Park in St. Petersburg, Florida. He's a chef and a restaurateur with a lifelong connection to farming and sustainable food systems. Uh, he also advocates for regenerative agriculture, which is a concern of ours and which we are looking forward to his observations. And also, he's an advocate for local food systems that help to address the environmental challenges and health challenges of our day to day. He is also the co-author recently of the Microbiomes Revolution, Human Medicine and Soil Medicine. And that will be coming out in English fairly soon, I think. And I'd also like to express my gratitude for his having participated in both the conference of Assisi in Rome via Zoom last year, and also for his participation last year in our SSGN New York meeting at the Thomas Berry Place. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Emmanuel, and we'd very much like to hear your outline of regenerative agriculture prospects and challenges.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you very much, James Ensign, and who invited me. I'm happy to share my thoughts with all of you. Uh, so, regenerative agriculture is a basically a return to nurturing the soil, working with nature instead of against nature. And I would like to use a metaphor, the metaphor of athletes who use drug performance enhancing drugs, and it works in the short terms, but there is a cost in the long term. And soil is a living organism that behaves just like any living organism. You can trick it for a while, but eventually there is a price to pay. In chemical-based agriculture dates back from after the First World War, where it was noted that around the chemical plants that were producing explosives, the grass was greener, and therefore those chemical plants were transformed into fertilizer plants, and that was the major part of the Green Revolution that was advocated by Mr. Borlaug, who won the Nobel Prize in, I think, 1970, because he increased food production in the world had a very, very big impact, and actually saved a lot of people from starvation. So there was a good side to that use of chemicals, but the long-term price, is that all the agricultural land that had arable soil, that was rich in organic matter and rich in microorganisms, all of a sudden lost went from an average of 5% of organic matter down to 1% or sometimes less. And that implied that there was, like any drug addict, the soil needed to uh, produce crops that were dependent on more and more chemicals. And we're reaching a point where there is soil is only a physical support, and everything else has to be brought in through chemicals. Um, the consequences of this are pretty dramatic because the Mississippi carries an average of 22 truckloads a minute of soil that is eroded from the whole Mississippi basin. And the Mississippi has always carried some silt. However, it was never carrying as much fertilizers and chemical residues as it is now. That study is from NASA, and you can Google it easily and find it, and then you'll see the plume of sediment that is carried by the Mississippi into the Gulf of Mexico, and that again creates a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, and pollution that results from the Mississippi, but also other rivers coming from Florida, with the famous red tide. So the short-term gains have very definite long-term effects. And the encouraging thing is that now more and more farmers are starting to understand that their real capital is their soil. And on one hand, they are squeezed by the cost of chemical inputs that keep on increasing. And on the other hand, they are squeezed by the people they sell their products to, and their margins are becoming thinner and thinner. At the same time, some farmers that are becoming more and more numerous are adopting no-till regenerative agriculture, which means that you do not till the soil, so you don't spend a lot of money into heavy equipment, diesel fuel, and and also people use cover crops that add, so the soil is never left barren, because just the soil is as delicate as our skin, and if we're not clothed, on top of looking ridiculous, we also would get sunburn. The soil, the same thing happens to the soil. Keeping it covered preserves moisture, keeps moisture in the soil, adds organic matter to the soil, and all the roots are millions and millions of channels that are per square yard that are draining the water into the soil. On naked soil, a drop of water has a tremendous impact, is like a little bomb on the aggregates of soil that are held together by glomalin, which is glomalin is like glue that is holding molecules of dirt together. And it gives integrity to the soil. When a drop of rain hits that very tiny thing, it shatters it, and then the water does not percolate in the soil, accumulates in a puddle, and the puddle overflows and goes into a ditch and into a stream and into a river and ends up in the sea. So farmers are adopting no-till. The foundation of regenerative agriculture is no-till and cover crops and crop rotations, which includes, in many instances, animals that will eat the cover crop. And if they eat, they poop. And everybody's poop is somebody else's lunch. And insects and insects reproduce in the cow patties. Birds scatter it around, eat the larva, poop again with a enriched poop that is based on protein, and the whole ecological cycle of nature takes place. And that is the way it has worked for millions of years in the prairies of central United States, the Midwest. So those cycles of nature have been disturbed, and now regenerative agriculture farmers are adopting those methods with success and economic success and environmental success. And farmers are business people. They depend on the income from their farm, and they will do what is right for their wallets, but it happens to be also what is right for the environment. So that is a very encouraging movement. Farmers are not easy people to be convinced. They are very reticent to try new things. However, when they see that their neighbor that has a field that looks like it's filled with weeds, when they want to have very clean fields, and they have a pride in having no weeds, but they realize that their neighbor is making more money, that helps them change to see the light, and they slowly change. And like anything else, we need to reach a critical mass. So this is for large scale agriculture. On the other hand, we need the role. I like to talk about urban farms and local food systems. The role of urban farms is very important. We're so used to think that supermarkets is where food comes from, that we forget that there are people, farmers, and people in between that fill the shelves. And it is surprising to see how little the general public knows where their food comes from. It comes from the supermarket. And the same thing, they go to the toilet, they flush it, and it disappears in thin air, and nobody asks a question. So the role of an urban farm like the one that I am running is to show people how to grow food, the connection with soil microbiome, and our dependence on the microorganisms that are really the cornerstone of life on Earth. So we educate children, we educate adults, and we give them a taste of of vegetables that are just picked. We give tasting tours of the farm, and people are amazed to see the intensity of the flavor. And that is due to two things. One is that we have a very rich soil, but the other thing is the freshness. In a supermarket, the fresh vegetables are on average 17 days old. And the nutritional quality tends to decline after 3 days. So refrigeration, and they try to have the optimum um, refrigeration, but nevertheless, it is a half dead plant. So urban farms educate the public and create a demand, and that education create a demand for fresher product, for greater variety of products. To give you an idea, on half an acre, less than half an acre of land that we cultivate, we have at times close to 100 different plants. You go to a supermarket and there is maybe 20, 30, 50 items, and they are pretty much commodities that you find in every single supermarket in the country. Some of them come like some apples from New Zealand. You find basil from Peru and Ecuador, tomatoes from Canada, cantaloupes from Mexico, and so on. The average food mile for each item is about 1,500 miles, and a high cost of fossil fuel, including the refrigeration and the distribution and so forth. So at one end, you have a farmer that gets paid pennies, and then you have brokers and truckers and intermediaries and retailers that make a substantial amount of money, and the consumer that pays high prices. For example, we sell organic kale for $4 a pound. Publix, which is the big supermarket chain in our area, sells it for $8 a pound, and it comes from California, and it's 17 days old. So urban farms have urban farms and peri-urban farms have are the cornerstone of the development of a local food system. And the local food system is essentially the production, the distribution, and to a certain extent, the processing of products that are grown locally. In the Tampa Bay area, we're a big producer of strawberries and tomatoes that at certain times of the year are shipped all over the country. What we envision is that those farmers who are either go from they are feast or famine. Either they make a lot of money or they lose everything because of frost or flooding or whatever. What we would like to see is to have, if they have 100 acres of strawberries, to dedicate maybe to start with 5 or 10 acres of other crops so that they would diversify, like we're encouraged to diversify our investments portfolio. It's the same principle. That's so I'm involved with USF, which is the University of South Florida, and within the university we have formed a transdisciplinary group that focuses on. It is part of the Macrobiome Research Institute that was founded by Dr. Christian Bréchot, with whom I wrote the book that we worked on for the last 3 years. But we're also focusing on the development of a local food system, because a local food system has an economic, a social, educational, and environmental impact. And those are dividends that are essentially free dividends, because I can assure you that the broccoli farmer that has a 50-acre field of broccoli in the Central Valley in California, really doesn't care and cannot, even if he did want to, could not care about education of the school children in the Tampa area. He does not care either, or he may care but cannot do anything about the transportation, because 50 acres of broccoli produces a lot of broccoli, and he needs to ship them. And there is no way that there are enough people to buy them in California. And having dinners at the farm on 50 acres of broccoli, he has other things to do, and he cannot care about the neighbors having a good time and experiencing his farm. He may not want them to experience it, depending on what methods they are using. On the other hand, within a local food system, a farmer can generate some additional revenue from farm-to-table dinners, from tours, from education, and instead of growing 50 acres of broccoli, they will have half an acre of radishes and 2 acres of lettuces, and you get the picture. A much more diverse production, and their impact, economic, social, educational, and environmental impacts in the community is far greater. And they will sell their products for usually less money, and they will offer better quality. So the development of a local food system will never meet the needs of a whole community. However, it can increase the resilience of a community on many different aspects. Throughout the world, a city like Rome, for example, the reason why food is so good in Rome and in many Italian cities is that around the city there is a big green belt, and the farms are within 20, 30 minutes, an hour at the most, from the restaurants and the markets where that food is being sold, and so there's a very short circuit. And that is something that should be encouraged. And it's already happening in many instances in America, but it is really at its infancy, and there is much more that can be done. So that's what we're working on. I would like to say, to quote a study that has been published in the PNAS, that I think that blew my mind when I saw it. And I think that Jim posted it on in the announcement. And I would encourage everybody to take a look at it. And you don't need to read the whole study, but just look at a graphic that is called the repartition of biomass on Earth. And in a very short description, the total biomass, plants, and all living organisms on Earth represent a biomass of 550 gigatons or billion tons. Plants represents 450 gigatons. Bacteria, viruses, and all and fungi and other microorganisms represent 93, so close to 20%, 18% of the biomass. And to put humans represent 0.06 gigaton. So if we compare the biomass of bacteria and viruses and fungi on Earth versus humans, it is humbling to look at it. And those numbers don't really mean, I cannot father them. So I tried to figure out a way to illustrate it. And I said bacteria are the smallest living organisms, or some of the smallest living organisms on Earth. And I'm going to compare them with blue whales. And if you were to put all the biomass of bacteria and microorganisms and transform that into blue whales and put the blue whales head to tail in a straight line, you would get you could get a line that would be long enough to go between the Earth and the Moon 46 times of blue whales, head to tail. I think that gives a scale of the difference. And to me, that was also another thing. I'm interested in the intelligence of living things. And we talk about the intelligence of humans and human intelligence. And I've had some discussions with our editor when we were working on the book. And I was talking about the intelligence of bacterial colonies. And he said, well, you cannot talk about the intelligence of bacterial colonies. And obviously, it is not the same intelligence as humans. However, I think that the ultimate form of intelligence is to avoid self-destruction. And if one accepts that premise, I think that we may have something to learn from bacterial colonies because they have adapted to absolutely every environment possible, probably throughout the universe. Certainly from 2 miles down in the Earth crust to 30,000 feet up in the atmosphere, and anywhere in between, from the dry valleys of Antarctica to tropical forests, um, bacteria and microorganisms are absolutely everything. And without them, life would not be life as we know it would not be possible. So doing some research for this book has given me a totally different perspective, and I cannot help but think in terms of history that one should not look at history measured in years, centuries, or millennia, but into billions of years. And the history of life on Earth is absolutely fascinating. And the resilience of microorganisms, absolutely mind-boggling. Uh, so the connection between regenerative agriculture and bacteria is really very important, because regenerative agriculture is working with bacteria and the systems that exist on Earth. And I find it very interesting to see the parallel between successful human systems and successful bacterial colonies. And I think that there are some universal laws that we are starting to discover, because we have means of investigation that are really extremely that we could not even imagine 10 or 20 years ago, that are really making that are helping us to make great strides in understanding the systems that are governing life on Earth. Shall we open to questions?
Yes, that sounds like a good idea. So if anybody would like to join the discussion, please raise your hand or click on the hand icon, and we can begin. So and I'll ask Natasha and Kalisha. Joe Holland is raised his hand, so if we can unmute Joe, that would be great. And actually, I was going to mention something about Joe Holland used to tell me about the situation in New York, that local farms during the Depression helped to the city to survive because they were nearby. But I think this has radically changed, hasn't it, Joe?
Yeah, which of course means if we have a food crisis, the cities are in a very frightening situation. A friend of mine was the head of the New York State Food Task Force, and he said she said New York City had only 3 to 5 days before it became just terrifying what would happen. Yeah. Anyway, but I have a very simple factual question, Emmanuel. This is wonderful. Thank you so much. Just when is your book being translated to English? When will it be published, and how do we get it?
Well, thank you for the question and your interest. We, Christian Bréchot and I, wanted to have it translated, and we were actually about to hire a translator, and then he told the publisher of the the book that we've been working with, and she said, "Oh, no, no, don't worry about it. We already started that, and initially it is going to be translate. It will be available online and in English-speaking countries, and then based on, they will determine. She will have to find to make an agreement with a Anglo-Saxon publisher to do it in print."
Okay, you don't have any idea of when?
It doesn't take very long to translate
Yeah.
this. I hate to say it, but ChatGPT can translate it into a minute or two, and after that, it's a matter of for a translator to check it and make sure that.
Yeah.
So it's probably done. I have not been in touch with the publisher, so we don't know. But we got some very good reviews in France, which is comforting.
Well, let us know as soon as it's ready, okay?
Thank you.
Oh, we have a question from Marianne, and then after that, Ensign. So, Kolisha, if you could open up. Thank you. Marianne, please. Welcome.
Yeah, hi. Emmanuel, I think that it's something like 2/3 of the land mass in the world is in a desert state. I understand that. And to me, the solution for sustainability is really encouraging regenerative agriculture on a large scale where we don't have any use of the land at all. And it's so clear that we wouldn't be fighting over land if we had, all that other land that's in a desert state. And so much of that land is really the product of wars and, moving and stuff. And so, and then of course, once we move all that land into fertile land, then that would have a major impact on climate change, right? I mean, that it's kind of like what's the answer? The answer sort of seems to be regenerative agriculture.
Yes, and I think that the deserts have a role to play. For example, because you have to take a big look at the big picture. The Sahara, 20,000 years ago, was very green and was somewhat tropical. In the Baudelaire Depression in Chad, there was an accumulation of over hundreds of feet of remnants of lake life, and that is very rich in phosphorus. Today, the Amazonian basin depends on phosphorus that is blown away from winds that come into the Baudelaire Depression in Chad, is carried across the Atlantic, ends up in Florida, but also in the Amazon. And that solved a mystery because there was not enough phosphorus in the Amazonian rainforest, but there was a lot of vegetation. So where did that phosphorus coming from? And it has been found that it is. So we need to think in much, much longer term.
And much bigger term.
The cycles, yes, the cycles of nature and history of the environment should not be measured in decades, but in millennia. And look at the lowest plateau in China.
Right.
That is the lowest plateau, is a very fertile that was getting eroded. Now they are stabilizing it. Yesterday I was watching a video of how the Chinese are regenerating, transforming desert into fertile land. And what they do is that they get round bales of straw, they stretch it over the sand, and they have a machine that has not a blade, but a dull blade that turns that straw that is laying flat into vertical. So they make tiny hedges that are maybe 12 inches tall, made out of organic material that is sufficient to catch, to stop the wind and to stop the water, the runoff. and that creates a place where seeds can grow, and it creates a micro environment, but over long distances. In the Sahel, where I spent some time in Niger and Mali, because of the multiplication of cattle and goats in particular, the area was very, very fast becoming, there was a desertification. And a local man who's become a very famous started to follow the contour of the terrain and aligning stones, and the stones would catch sand. So when the rain came, the water would not run off, but get stopped by that little dam or swale. And then brushes and seeds would catch and have a little more water than normal, and they would prosper. And they have been greening and planting millions and millions of trees in an area that was desert. So yeah, there are cycles, and we can have a hand at degenerating the soil or regenerating it.
Yeah. And I think, it seems to me that a group like SSGN could actually have a little, imagining no limits, but actually get a plan where teams of people would go in to regenerate Earth, possibly starting with places that have had wars, the places that have been turned into deserts because there were wars there. We know there's new spaces right now around Ukraine. We know there's new spaces right now around Israel. But if we could get someone in there now and go, oh, look, this land is worth nothing, but we know how to turn it around, and then people maybe would begin to understand what the real impact of war and fighting can really be.
I think that yes, we can get involved, we can facilitate it, but we should not. We need to to encourage and to facilitate the people who are attached to that land and respect their knowledge and emotional attachment to the land to do it. And the best way we can do it, in my view, is where we live. There's all kinds of things. Just by buying locally produced vegetables, you are having a very big impact on how you spend your dollars. You're voting with your dollars, and you're helping local farmers who can then prosper and then will be imitated by others. And there is a multiplying effect that is very important. So yes, we all can do a little something. And supporting those causes. In Madagascar, that has been devastated by cattle. There's some fantastic projects, and I was involved with. I made a proposal to do some home gardens in southern Madagascar, just collecting the cow dung that is wasted and just gathering it and doing some small gardens in people's backyards and using the water that they wash with to water it. So there's all kinds of ways, creative ways of spurring that regeneration.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Also, Kalisha, if we could have Father Fidelis unmuted, because I think he has some very interesting projects that he's working on. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be present in this presentation. And thank you, Emmanuel. You see, you came close to my place where you mentioned Chad. I'm from Nigeria, Southeast Nigeria. And we just registered our foundation, the Plenitudo Vita Ecological Foundation. And we are negotiating about 11 hectares of farmland. What you talked about, the social, economic, educational, and environmental dividends of regenerative agriculture. I was wondering if after this webinar, we have more time to discuss with you, because what you are pointing at coincides with my vision, but I need to really widen my horizon and get more knowledge of how to do this, because my argument has been that the social ecology and the geophysical ecology have a lot to do. And to regenerate the land, human beings need to be regenerated as well. So it's something that compenetrates. So I just want to
I'll be very happy to spend time with you and to answer any questions that you may have. I spent some time in Nigeria. When I was in Niamey. No, I was in Niamey, but also in Zinder. We would fly out of Kano. So yeah, I know that part of the world. And by the way, also, I was the only Caucasian to live in Timbuktu. I had wonderful memories when we'll talk about it. But I would suggest that you make a note of this organization. It is, I think, a French-based organization that is called the GRET, G-R-E-T. And they are very active in Madagascar, in West Africa, East Africa also. And there is also an organization that is an American organization that specializes in drilling wells. But the problem, one of the reasons why there has been desertification in the Sahel is because the French dug wells. And if you have more wells, then you can have more cattle. And if you have more cattle, they'll eat everything. And if you do not let nature regenerate, then it becomes a desert. So wells can be, it's a double-edged sword, but they well managed, they can be absolutely wonderful, but they need to be coupled with other techniques like digging holes in the ground and little depressions that will collect water and protect young plants. Anyway, there is a lot of techniques that I'm happy to share with you, and I'm not a specialist of that, but I'll be very happy to share whatever I know about it, and put you in touch with people who might be good resources for you.
That's very exciting.
So please feel free to reach out to me by phone or email, and we can set up a time to get together.
Emmanuel, Florida, really our home base, our area. It's so important. How do we encourage regenerative, permaculture, good agriculture, organic agriculture. How do we really encourage that widespread in Florida? What are your ideas?
As consumers, when you buy something from writing to companies like General Foods or whatever, Kellogg's, or making comments, they have a consumer comments. Those companies know that for one person who takes the time to write, there is 1,000, they speak for 1,000 people. So I think that is something that is important. And a lot of those companies are starting to, understanding that they need to take a long-term view towards sustainability. And if you write to them and say, I'm interested in regenerative agriculture and sustainability in the environment, what do you do as a corporate entity to do that? Are you helping or are you hurting? And they will take that seriously. So that is one way. Again, buying from a farmer's market, but not the farmer's market where they go and buy the leftovers from Publix, but from farms. Join a CSA, buy from a farmer that that is voting with your dollars is probably the best thing that you can do.
Yes,
And supporting nonprofits that advocate for that. Also, there is, if you look up on YouTube, you will find tons of material on regenerative agriculture. And I particularly encourage you to look at some talks from Gabe Brown, who is in North Dakota.
Joe, you had a comment. Kolisha, if you could unmute Joe Holland.
Yeah, well, thanks again so much, Emmanuel. First, a little comment. The sand from the wind blowing the material, phosphorus, I guess, from the Sahara to the Amazon. In Miami, I remember at a certain time of the year, we used to get people called Sahara sand. It would be on the ventilating ducts and it would be all red. It came over to Miami too. Anyway, I was thinking we had, I don't know if some of you who were in the CZ, one of the last 17 or 18, I forget which meeting, Lila June Johnson spoke to us, yeah. And she has now finished her PhD at the University of, I forget where, but anyway, but she's published her dissertation. It's available online at her website, lilajune.com. And it's about really the regenerative agriculture that the Native Americans use. I know that I'm from New England, and I know that the Native Americans there, they had what they call deer parks. They cleaned out the forest through controlled burns, and the deer were able, and new plants were able to grow up, and the deer were able to navigate through there and eat, and they flourished, and so they had good hunting ground for meat. We have deer in our property here, but the forests are so cluttered, they can't eat anything here. They only come on the lawn and they eat on the edge of the forest. That's the only place they can find food. But what I was thinking is her dissertation is really wonderful. And another example she has, that, the legends are that the buffalo followed the Indian. She said, no, that's backwards. The Indians followed the buffalo. No, it's backwards, is that the buffalo followed the Indians. They would burn the prairies, and that would create new life and new regeneration. And the buffalo, wherever the Indians would burn the prairies, then the buffalo would come. So, but she's got a whole series of things in her dissertation, and that would be another person to follow up on this one, because I think regenerative agriculture is a wonderful theme for SSGN to build on.
Right. Yes.
Well, it has the potential to really impact to really have an economic, social, educational, and environmental impact. That because everybody needs to eat, and that is, we spend an average of $3,000 a year on food, and that's a lot of money. So if you can shift 10%, 20%, 30%, 50% towards regenerative agriculture, it is going to make a huge difference on all those it will have dividends on all those aspects.
Yes, so thank you. Terry has a question. If we could unmute Terry. And after that, Gary.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I don't know if you've seen the movie Common Ground, the documentary. It's available free online. You just pay postage to have it sent to you, but they'll send you a copy. Just mention a nonprofit that you'd like to show it to, like a school or a farming group, for example. And just to also wanted to mention the Earth Bill. It's legislation that we're trying to get passed in Congress, that of which regenerative agriculture is a very big, important part of that. So if you were to look up the Earth Bill, you would see what's there. So that's
You're bringing up a very good point, is also talking to your legislators, regardless of which party they are, is they need to hear from their constituents, and they use also a model for one person that speaks. That person represents the thinking of many more. So that has an important impact as well.
So true. Gary, you had a question?
Yes, yes, I do. My first recollection of someone outside of the farming that I grew up with that was doing something unique was Findhorn. And I'm just wondering, is the Findhorn experience relevant to the regenerative agriculture that you're talking about?
Yes, there is in a community, you have you have a biodiversity of ideas, of efforts. Some produce better results than others, but everybody adds a stone to the edifice. And Findhorn certainly was a major contributor to it. At the same time, in my family, I have an uncle who was born in 1899, and he was a well-known gastroenterologist in France. He started his practice in the mid-1920s until the mid-1970s, until he passed away in 1974. And very early on in his career, he realized the importance of the gut microbiome and the soil microbiome. And he was advocating, I have a number of his publications. He was struggling to be heard because nobody wanted to listen to him. Everybody was focusing on Norman Borlaug, who was the founder of the Green Revolution. And that's what the future was. Not listening to somebody who says, well, you need to put cow manure in your fields, and you need to graze, and you need to have biodiversity, and you need to have hedges, and you need to have, and the soil health. He was basically saying, you cannot grow healthy food on sick soil. but nobody was listening to him. So, except that I was forced to listen to him, but he was spending the summers with my parents writing. And at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I heard about the little critters in our guts and in the soil. So to me, that was not new. And when I run into Christian Bréchot, we hit it off because he was what he was interested in, and his approach of the gut microbiome was needed to be complemented by the soil microbiome because the two are very closely linked together. So yeah, there's a lot of people who are working in India. Shiva, her name Sandhana Shiva, or I met her at Eckerd College here.
Vandana Shiva, yeah.
Vandana Shiva, thank you. She's been a very strong advocate of respecting the rights of farmers to save seeds, and she's been promoting indigenous knowledge. A wonderful book also is by Robin Wood Kimmerer, Braiding Sweetgrass, which is indigenous respect and fundamental understanding of nature and communion with nature that we have lost in the Western world. And we need to reconnect with that wisdom because for many generations, the indigenous people had to have that very close relationship with nature that they depended on.
Right. Sharon, you made some interesting comments. Would you like to speak about some of your comments?
Well, hi there. Thank you. Sharon Joy Clyde here in St. Petersburg, not too far from Emmanuel and his glorious 15th Street farm and almost publicly disclosed kitchen. Yes, I'm big on networking like the rest of the world does in networking, the mycelial networks. And I just thought I'd toss in a few ideas of some of the networking. Yes. Thanks, Joe, for bringing up Lila June. I put her website in there. She was to be coming to Sarasota, but instead Helene came. So I don't know when she might be coming back. Sarasota would welcome her. But the networking in Florida, and certainly Paul Hawken is another one with his books about the soil drawdown and regeneration. When you make everybody a star, you got a sky full of stars. And I always like the idea of making it visible. So in Florida, if we did all these networks together, also with the Kellogg Foundation, they're big into dialogue, which certainly we're doing. And like you said, one letter is equal to 1,000. The challenge, it seems to me, with humanity today is random acts of kindness. What do we do to bring them to cohering acts of kindness? Random takes too long to get there. So I like to network. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Sharon.
I would like to say that I'm indebted to Sharon Joy because she introduced me to the thinking of the system thinking by Fritjof Capra, and that has really broadened my horizons and given me an understanding that in life and in nature, everything is interconnected. And it is fascinating to see how to observe it. And that has been a very enriching thing. So thank you, Sharon Joy.
And back to you.
Well, do we have any more questions for Emmanuel?
Thanks
If
so
not,
much. Great presentation. Very,
like
very
to.
nice.
We'd like to express, all of us, I think, our sincere thanks to Emmanuel, and also for Ensign for introducing us, and also to the SSGN board, who are very interested in this subject. And also my special thanks to Natasha and Kolisha behind the scenes, and who have assisted so ably with the operations of the program. And what we would like to do is invite everybody to tune in next month for our next program. And so we're working on it right now, and Natasha will send out a notice as soon as we have our next speaker. But I hope to follow up with Father Fidelis and Emmanuel and all interested other people, so that we can look at how we can cooperate in helping Father Fidelis, because his projects are of great interest and along the same lines that we've been chatting about this evening. So I think that's be very exciting. So thank you, everyone. And we'd like to wish you good night and see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You all very much. Thanks, Emmanuel.